The purpose of this conversation today is to get inside and on the wavelength that is the mind of Troy Stone. Maybe his backdrop gives us an example of what that might look like. He joins me, Chief Scientific Officer, post audio mixer at Cyber Resonance, and also a co-founder. And he has worked on all sorts of media properties. So we're going to tell his story here on the Onto Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. Troy, first of all, I really am grateful to have your support. I know you've watched a lot of these, and thanks for coming on yourself and
Uh,
telling your story too today.
yeah, and it's a pleasure to be on, and thanks a lot for inviting me. Like I said earlier, off screen, I really appreciate what you're doing. I think you're really helping link the ecosystem across the entertainment, spectrum, across the verticals, and we wouldn't have access to a lot of these people normally. I think, and I know a lot of my friends and we definitely are appreciative of it. So keep doing it. You're doing a great job, and thanks again for reaching out.
Well, we're going to learn about your job, and we get access to you today, which is a whole lot of fun. How do you marry the art and the science of sound and get the most out of both?
Yeah, so marrying the sound and the science, right? So that's an interesting collaboration because often as artists, whether we're a director, producer, actor, we may not be so scientifically inclined, um, which is fine. I grew up, you know, as a kid in the 80s. My dad had a computer right from the start. He was a computer programmer, or he and still is. Um, I always had computers were always involved, always, even, you know, um, before I got into music. Well, sorry, I digressed. I'm also a composer, so we'll go into that later. But I started in music. Didn't go to school for post audio. Didn't even care about post audio. That was a thing that happened later. Music was my passion as a kid. I played in a jazz band. You know, uh, Went to North Texas State, played in their 3 o'clock lab bands, and did all that. And then even went to USC for a year because I'm originally from California, and studied film scoring. So I did this through my 20s. I was a composer. Still love music. Still do music actually, just not primarily. Um, but the reason I'm talking about the music is because it is related to that science. I think the music is why I got into science because as a kid, I had computers and sequencers and computer recording equipment. Um, so I was always using that, and it was very integral in the music that I did. As a composer, quite frankly, computers are a necessity at this point. I mean, when you write music for film or television, you are mocking up the score, usually before the orchestra plays it, all with a computer. All the parts that you write out are done with computer programs as opposed to manually written out by hand. There's a program called Finale. So the computer part was established early on in the music. Um, with post audio, once I got to post audio and realized, wow, I'm actually really good at this. Maybe I should rethink some things. Um, it was a natural fit because science again and computers is so integral in the job just on a basic level. I'm not even talking about developing software or writing algorithms. Um, you have to be adept at the computer. What led me to that was as I did post audio, I started, wondering, not all these plugins work the way we want. There's so many like, God, if it would only do this, if it would only do that, if the dialogue would only be leveled in a way that was more natural instead of using a lot of tools that were actually originally made for music. So there's just different aspects of the workflow in post audio that I felt I was really wanting to learn more about that, and I knew that could be improved. So I would say, after I moved to Florida to work at the Golf Channel, probably in about 2014 or 15, I started really getting into programming. Um, like I said, my dad's a programmer. So, he helped me get a program called MATLAB. I started taking classes sort of like on the side when I go on vacations or breaks from Golf Channel. I'd fly to Boston and take take some classes and tried to, learn as much as I could about audio digital signal processing and the actual programming behind our industry. So for me, the marriage came about pretty much that way. It was a natural thing. I wanted to learn more about, what I could do and what software was out there and how it was really programmed. Yeah.
There's this concept of training your ear in learning an instrument and on the music side. How about your journey in you training your ear to know
Yeah.
what you want to hear, to know what sounds good to you?
So I love that question. So exciting. I mean, it's so with music, when you're scoring music or you're doing film and TV or really even rock, any music, quite frankly, there is a landscape. There's an audio landscape. And for example, like I'll go start with some stuff that everyone will know. When you listen to Yes, the band Yes, or you listen to the Rolling Stones, those records sound really different, like from an engineering standpoint. You know, the Rolling Stones, much more organic. The vocals are, I'd say, a little bit more in the background. Often the guitar is really out there. It's got its own identity and sound. Whereas Yes, different. Yes is, you know, um, a much more eclectic sound. They've got the vocal a lot more out front, I would argue. So what I'm trying to get at is the sound that we just like with rock and roll in film and TV, it's the same thing. When you watch Star Wars or you watch a George Lucas film or you watch a Steven Spielberg film or you watch um, so many. My other favorite one, director. Uh, it'll come to me. I don't want to waste time there. But the point is, these people have iconic audio scores, and not only scores, but just the sound of the dialogue, everything. So I trained my ear, musically at first by listening to people I loved and transcribing their music. I would listen to it and try to, play it on the piano. I'm a keyboard player. So I would, listen, and that's how I sort of developed my ear to pick up, to be able to play what they're playing. What you say by play by ear. And then as I did music, more and more, as in jazz, you're improvising. So improvising is a really interesting thing because so much if it's not even planned out, you're literally like listening and playing and responding like a conversation in real time. So I train my ear in those ways. Just copying artists, copying the people I loved musically, and then later, of course, with jazz, improvising. And then when you compose too, you're imagining in your mind, a melody that would fit this theme for this character, or how you can evoke a super sad scene, like the melodies and stuff. And you're always imagining and using your ears, uh, sort of in your mind to figure this out and then playing it. So with post audio, very natural. In fact, here's the thing with post audio mixing. All of the best mixers I know, and I learned at Fox Sports in LA off Pico. I was really lucky. I met some guys, mixers there. They'd invite me over to Fox and FX, and they taught me right on the job how to do it. But they all were ex-musicians or war musicians, very good ones. I think one of the guys at Fox Sports was Madonna's producer. Some major people that have gotten into post audio from music. They all have great ears, amazing talent. So I think having a good ear is essential if you're going to do music or you're going to do post audio.
A good ear to what you deem as what best fits whatever you're working on. How often does your ear and what does it look like when you might be critiquing others? You might just turn on the radio or you might be watching a show and you hear certain audio. How does that part of your mind get engaged, because I'm sure it's always active, even if it's your not your own individual work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, the thing that I grew up, or the thing that I learned from those mixers in LA at Pico was that exact thing. You're always checking your work and listening to it on the computer, on the iPad, on the phone, on TV, on broadcast. I just did something for a show on A&E last week, and it was tight against the deadline. We got everything turned in, all good. But I'm watching the premiere and I'm going, that's not the right version of the mix. So what happened is because things were tight, I'm assuming this happened, um, that mix didn't make air. There's the correct version. But the next morning, I got on the website on the streaming platform and it was there. So what I'm getting at is we're always checking. Without that, you can't improve. I mean, when I hear people go, "Oh, I never listen to what I do. I never watch what I do ever." Look, I don't expect you to sit there and watch all of it, but if you're never watching or listening to what you do, I'm not sure you're going to be able to really improve. Not sure I agree with that. Yeah, I
What do
think
you
it's crucial to do that.
what about your own self-evaluation are you harshest on?
Harshest thing for me is two things. If it's film and television, the dialogue has got to be crystal clear, and that is the anchor of 90% of the material we work on. There's always the edge conditions, um, but the dialogue has got to be perfect. And then the second thing I think is music and sound design. But this can vary on a project. There are some projects where that's more important. I'll give you an example. So I love Stranger Things. I'm sure a lot of people do. I did not like the audio mix at all on the last season. I thought it was way over the top. It wasn't like the other three or the other seasons prior, which I thought were amazing. I thought the sound design was ridiculous. Actually, it was silly. It was so like you'd watch a guy, drop his pen, and you'd hear this just like explosion or some this mat. It was just too much. I'm not sure what they were going for there, but on the other side, the other seasons, obviously what they were doing was purposeful, stylistic. So I'm always doing this. I'm always checking. I'm constantly evaluating. And yeah, I'm definitely difficult on myself. Anyone that works with me would know that. I'm super critical. I mean, usually I'm always going, "Oh, it was great, but like if we could have just had, another day on that scene." or something. And I think that's awesome. I think when you stop being critical of yourself in a healthy way, okay, it's got to be healthy or it's
Well, where does the
worthless.
healthiness come? Like, how do you define healthiness? Because sometimes that can be a really fine line to sort of deal with.
Yeah. I think when you start obsessing and tearing yourself apart and blaming yourself for stuff you have to have a perspective. So you just like all things in life, I don't care what we're doing, we should always strive to be better, but with perspective, healthy. And yeah, and look, it's so tricky. I'm not always saying do it right, um, at all. We just do the best we can. But I think you should strive to do it in a moderate, healthy manner. If that makes any sense. I mean, I don't have magic words. I think it's trial and error. You'll know. You'll know when you're tearing yourself too much, tearing yourself up too much, or it's going negative and not being useful. I think you will know if you listen to your heart or listen inside.
How early do you find that you listen to your own heart in that this was what you wanted to do? Clearly, you explained that growing up around computers and programming and your dad, that was an important part of your early childhood in life and getting involved in the industry. How much of yourself do you see in your dad, and do you see in you? And then how much of what you're doing is a branch off? How have you created your own identity separate from him?
Yeah, I mean, so me and my dad have a very special relationship. He is also the co-founder of Side Presidents. We work together every day on everything, and we've always been extremely tight. I remember when he played music a little bit as a kid. He got me the first guitar and taught me, some songs on it. Um, he is an amazing individual. He is my idol. I mean, he got me into golf. He got me into everything. My dad is the center of my world. I can only hope, that I could be anywhere close to like what he is. Now, having said that, I absolutely have my own identity in the sense that I really didn't get into computer programming and we didn't start our business till 2020. We're talking 2 years ago. So there's a very different, we were more a different type of relationship before that. I'd see him a couple times a year. We'd talk on the phone often, but not every day. So it's gotten a lot more, interesting now that we're actually doing a business together. So, but he, he basically just, he's always been there. He always spent a lot of time with me. Uh, and he always was just so interesting and fun to be around. I mean, yeah, sure, there's arguments or stuff like we argue. We could have a blowout argument because we're so passionate. But after we argue, we tell each other we love each other, and it always resolves that day. Um, so, kind of digressed. I may not answer that question perfectly. You know how it goes when you're talking about your family.
You answered that question beautifully and candidly, which is the best answer I could ever want, because that's all I want is people to feel comfortable coming on with me and sharing their story and feeling that this is a safe space. Troy Stone is with me, audio genius extraordinaire. I'm Bryan Fenley. You said your dad is interesting. Explain what you mean by that.
He's so damn smart. I mean, he's so smart. So here's how things work at Cyber Resonance. I, I have the real world knowledge. I have a basic high level understanding of computer programming. I can take and write out the high level pseudocode, for lack of a better term. Think of this like an outline in a film or a TV project, right? You have like the outline, then you have like the script, which is every word written out. I look at coding kind of similarly. So when you actually write code, that's like the script, only about a billion times more lines of information. The outline or the high level, okay, of like a script would be like the pseudocode in code, where you're saying, look, the algorithm needs to do this, and these type of DSP functions will achieve it, and kind of that kind of stuff. So anyway, he's so interesting just because he's got two things that are fascinating. One of them, he can code from scratch all that stuff. Like he's got that old school Bill Gates type ability and all that. And those are his heroes, you know, Bill Gates and Jobs, the guys that pretty much like, I mean, all the things we have right now are kind of around those two people. So he came from that school, and not only can he computer program, but he can manage. He manages people too, and he knows a lot about business. So he's got these two things that are so interesting, and not a lot of people have that. Most like computer programmers or coders, they code. They haven't like managed or run companies um, either. So he's just got these really interesting talents. Not to mention, he's just one of these people that you would idolize. I mean, he treats my mom. He always has treated my mom like a princess.
Hmm.
Still, they've been married. I don't even want to say that, over 35 years, 40 years. I mean, he is my stepdad. He came into my life young, but they've been together since I was like 9 or 10. So, and they so I hardly ever see them fight. He's just a sweetheart, to her. And you look at that and try to emulate that, and do, he just, yeah. So great person, great friend, and an amazing talent. What more could you want?
I can see his influence on you and the ability to tap into that knowledge that he has, the well of information has been so beneficial for you in your own career. Can't even imagine just the gratitude you have for him. And as you're learning about coding, as you're learning about composing, and that mind of yours that is always working,
That is.
when you're dreaming, when you're asleep and you're dreaming, Troy, what are you thinking about?
So
And
it's
how
funny.
often does work come into your
Yeah.
mind when you put your head to the pillow?
A lot, actually. And it's so funny because Brian Harden, who
Yes, I
is a
love
great
him. Yeah,
great
great
friend of
guy.
mine, I still mix for him today. In fact, I mixed something for him yesterday. Um, I would me and him, we love Tiger, of course. I'd go in there when we all worked at the Golf Channel on site, and I go grab him, and I'd be like, Brian, I had this dream. You got to hear about it. I literally played around with Tiger, and Tiger was so cool. And I remembered every detail of it. Like it was just awesome. So often my dreams will be, look, I don't always have good dreams too. I have a lot of stressful dreams as well, but the fun dreams are, yeah, I get that one repeating often, like, or I'll be at the range and be like, Tiger, why am I not able to hit the shot? And he'll tell me, and it's so real. It's so fun, so that or music, often I will think I'm playing with people that I never had a chance to play with. Like I love Miles Davis, in jazz. And wow, what would have that been like? And I'll have a dream sometimes like I was playing with him like at a club. So those are the fun dreams. Um, then absolutely, I have stressful dreams. I will dream like sometimes with work, something didn't work out right. I'm late on something, and you're grinding trying to figure it out. Also, not now freelancing and not freelancing, but having my own company is what I should say. And we still have the post audio aspect of cyber resonance. We don't just do software. I'm also mixing because it's a great way to uh, work on the software as well. But anyway, the point is I'm getting all my own work. I'm out there marketing it every day. That's always stressful. You think, well, wait, what? This project's over now. What am I going to do? So it's that whole getting used to that and just trusting it. All lots of dreams about that. Like, why isn't this guy calling me? I've called him like 50 times, and he's either going to hate me or love me. So you're constantly like playing with that.
Troy, in your awake hours, in reflecting upon the work you've done spanning your career, what has been that which you couldn't even believe you're doing, that it has been something that you felt would be part of your wildest dreams
Yeah.
that you actually got to work on and be a part of?
So, I mean, in a broad sense, the I would never have envisioned I would do post audio, and absolutely never in a billion years envisioned I would do software programming. Just because it came so late for me on the software programming stuff. Even the post audio, though. Here's what happened with the post audio. The post audio happened because I was in a place composing. First of all, composing is very tricky. There's there's like a handful of them that do the major films. There's probably 10 or 15. There's nothing. And music libraries now have really taken over that film and TV world. So as an individual composer, man, it is not an easy route. I know I have great friends that still don't work that much. So while I was good at composing and very good at music, I wasn't able to really. I was struggling to earn a living in LA, and I met some guys that were composers too and musicians, and they go, yeah, we also mix like at one of them mixed at CBS, one of them mixed at Fox Sports. I go, mixed? What do you mean mixed? Mix what? And they go, mix film and TV, like the dialogue, the music, add sound effects. I go, that sounds interesting. I'm like, let me come and check it out once. Um, so I came, watched them, and it just it like clicked. It was like,
Wow.
oh wow, like you can take music, you can edit the music, you can add all the sound effects, and the dialogue just made sense. It really clicked. So it was a blast. And those two guys helped me. Um, Glenna Loop was one of them. Glenna Loop is still at Fox, an amazing mixer. Taught me, how to mix. I mean, they'd say, "Come on down, watch me." I'd go down there and watch them. Uh, didn't go to college or any of that stuff for that stuff. Just would watch them. And then one day they let me try to mix a spot, and then I think, like a friend of theirs had a position open up at CBS television distribution, and I got the Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy gig doing the promos for the creative department at Wheel and Jeff. So I would never have envisioned that in a million years. I fought it a lot in the beginning too. I called my dad and said, "Well, I can't give up music. I went to USC. I've been doing it my whole life. Like I can't do this. I can't just give up." And he said, "Look, you're not giving up. You're going to use these skills. If you have a passion for this, do it." He encouraged me, but I definitely fought it. Finally, I gave in, just surrendered. It was the best thing I ever did. Because if I didn't do that, I would never have gotten the software thing either, which has been the greatest, like craziest thing and the most satisfying. I would say probably, of the career things. Project wise, I mean, I would say quickly, Golf Channel was huge. I love golf. I played golf starting when I was 11 or 12. I was never on the golf team, couldn't do both, but I played as much as I could. I would have played on the golf team if I didn't do music as a kid, but it took too much of my time. And when the Golf Channel job, when I first saw it on LinkedIn open up, I didn't know anyone there. Sent a blind LinkedIn to someone there. Had an interview, didn't work. They didn't call back. Okay. And like a year later, I followed up and it opened and they flew me out instantly. So like Golf Channel was huge. I learned more at Golf Channel and got more opportunities and met the most amazing people at Golf Channel than anywhere. I mean, it was just, who would have thought too? Moving from LA to Florida, not sure about that. It was so that was just priceless. And I'm still working with those people absolutely as we speak. They've been so supportive. Um, so that would say I'm most proud of that, from the post audio side is what we did at Golf Channel. And then what the new stuff is pretty great too. It's different. The wrestling, the WWE, there's new opportunities happen when you're um, freelancing.
It's interesting, Troy, as we sort of wrap up this conversation.
Yeah,
I got one more question for you,
yeah,
but that your career was in a crossroads and you chose not to be stubborn. You're like, I can do music, composing, and that's not going to go away, but I can also open myself up to other things. When some might have hit that path in their life and said, I don't know about this, but you decided to take the plunge. And it's like you said, and how you've described, it's opened up all of these really awesome opportunities for you that you might not have seen coming, but you were open to new things, which I think is sort of a big telling theme of your life and how you've been able to maneuver the way you have. My last question for you here, and Troy Stone is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. I see the wavelength behind you. If you were to score your life in music form, what is that piece of sound going to be like?
That's an interesting question. Wow. So I think it would definitely be orchestral. I say orchestral because I feel of all the types of music out there, an orchestra is able to reproduce the widest gambit of emotion. I can go from, you know, super subtle, to huge, to it's just such a wide range of emotion. Think of all the different films and the different orchestral scores, and they also they hold. They don't sound dated. I mean, maybe the style could, okay, potentially, but the sound of an orchestra has been with us for hundreds of years,
Yeah.
and it's still with us. No matter how much we love the 80s or the 90s or the 60s or the 70s, that music has a very, very specific sound, and it comes and goes. People like it, they don't like it. It comes back. So I think the orchestra uh, would be the one I would choose to represent the waveform of my life. And I think it would be a piece of music that would be. I'm gonna go with a score. I'm gonna go with a movie and a score right now. I'm gonna go with AI from John Williams. So the movie AI by Steven Spielberg, scored by John Williams. That score, that movie is like what we're doing now. We're taking audio engineering and audio editing at Cyber Residence and bringing AI to that workflow and doing things that I think are so exciting. So that's my answer.
If I was going to give you my answer on that, my score would be The Social Network and the music
Oh,
behind that.
another
How good is that
brilliant.
with Trent Reznor, the synthesizers? I love all that stuff.
That
And
movie changed my thinking. I mean, that's another huge influence, and that score is absolutely one of my favorites. Trent Reznor is awesome. He's like a guy too. Talk about a dichotomy, because that is not an orchestral score. It is basically a synth score, sampled score. It's absolutely brilliant.
yeah,
Huge range of emotion
yeah.
in that too.
Oh, big
So
time.
so glad you. That's awesome. You brought that up because one of my tops.
I thought you would appreciate that. And as we sort of wrap it up here, I think that in this conversation, people might know you, but they're going to know something new about you. And the goal is for those in the business and around the business to gain appreciation for those who are behind the scenes, working long hours, making stuff happen, creative minds. And you definitely fit all of those checks on the checklist here. So having you on, Troy, was an absolute blast. And I'm so grateful that you're able to sort of take us into your world and give us a deep look at what you're all about and what you've done. Troy Stone, Chief Scientific Officer, co-founder, post audio mixer at Cyber Resonance. I'm Bryan Fenley. Troy, how fun was this? Thank you so much for letting us live inside your mind.
It was absolutely a blast, and you are a brilliant interviewer. You need to get your own show. Well, I
Thank
mean,
you.
like big show. Like you could do anything. In other words, that was absolutely great. Thank you so much, Bryan.